President Trump will pose challenges to governments all over the world. And that news today that Elon Musk, the billionaire owner of social media site X, joined in the first call between Donald Trump and President Zelensky of Ukraine. So how will those foreign leaders deal with the new president-elect? Mar-a-Lago, so much more than a country club. Trump's White House in waiting, defended like a fortress. Beware of the robot Rottweilers. It is here that the new America is being mapped out. And unlike in 2016, this Trump team is on a mission with a plan. Enter the godmother of Trump's victory, Susan Wiles, his campaign manager, his coach when he was coachable, a political fixer since the days of Reagan, and now the first female chief of staff since the beginning of the Republic.
Come, Susie, come here. Come here, Susie.
She, not Kamala Harris, is now the most powerful woman in Washington and beyond. And on victory night, Trump gave her top billing.
The Ice Maiden, we call her the Ice Maiden.
But the grandmother, who looks like few other women in Trump world, stayed silver-haired sphinx. For now, she's the gatekeeper to his mercurial mind.
Susie likes to stay in the background. She's not in the background. Come here, say something. Come here. Take over, Elon, yes, take over.
And if you're going to judge a leader by his friends, well, there's no escaping Elon, the richest man on Earth and outer space. The keystone of Trump's strange new electoral coalition of billionaires and ordinary bros. Elon is apparently taking part in some of Trump's calls with world leaders. So what can we expect from the new global order, or is it jungle? More a matter of men than alliances. Will Trump impose more trade sanctions against China? Will he defend Taiwan from Xi? What about his supposed bromance with Putin? The Russian leader called him yesterday to congratulate him, but will they do a deal to stop the war in Ukraine, and at whose expense? Also yesterday, two nervous-looking men at a summit in Budapest who in their own way are now dependent on the whims of Trump. Zelinsky for the future of his country, Starmer for the future of the special relationship. Will it grant favoured access to the White House or become a noose around Britain's neck with some impossible choices? All vital questions awaiting answers the day Trump takes over.
The President-elect of the United States, Donald John Trump.
The last time Trump took the oath of office, he spoke about American carnage and was obsessed with the size of the crowd. This time, whatever the crowd, he has a clear mandate from the electorate. Will it make him calmer or more aggressive? Will it change the tone? Washington is awaiting the court of King Donald II.
We will make America great again.
In a city of monuments that define the extraordinary journey of American power, perhaps the one of a founding father, wealthy entrepreneur and polymath can give a helping hand. Benjamin Franklin, the embodiment of the American dream of his day, just as Donald Trump, who used to own the hotel next to the statue, is the embodiment of another version of the American dream, albeit less philanthropic, scientific, or indeed polite. But if Trump was listening to Franklin, he might pick up some advice, and it's this. Whenever Benjamin Franklin was in a foul mood, he used to write what he called a placebo letter, in which he vented, but that letter never got sent, and the mood calmed down all around. On the other hand, try that in the age of social media impulsivity.
Lying against Project 25, which he knows, and so do...
To that point, here was Trump, Coke in hand, dictating posts, reacting to Kamala Harris's convention speech in August.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Oh, too many, thank you.
Rule by post on X, owned by his new bestie Elon, or on Truth Social, owned by Trump himself, will probably become the norm again. Many of them fired off from his bedroom in the White House before dawn has even broken on a weary and anxious world. Right, well, let's speak to Aaron David Miller. He's a former senior State Department official and also senior fellow of the Carnegie Endowment on Peace. Aaron David Miller, it's good to have you back on the program. Let's start with Iran, first of all. How serious is this development with Iran that we heard about from the FBI and the Justice Department this morning?
I mean, a significant, serious plot We don't know the details to kill the former president-elect. Very serious. Whether it would change Mr. Trump's calculations with respect to policies is unclear. There's been all sorts of speculation that the threat against George H.W. Bush influenced George W. Bush's policies on Iraq. But we really don't know that. You're dealing with a guy, frankly, and actually the plot could reinforce this, who doesn't really have a clear conception, in my view, of what the American national interest is. His policies are opportunistic, transactional, ad hoc, and they're tethered to his personal aims, his business interests, his vanity. And so it's conceivable, right? Nothing focuses the mind like a plot to kill you. It could, in fact, reinforce, not that they need reinforcement, Mr. Trump's hostility and maximum pressure campaign toward Iran. Can I just offer another point, though, before we go on? You know, we don't do kings in America. We leave that to the Brits, the Europeans, Charlemagne, the czars. We still have guardrails in this country. And let's hope over the next 4 years that those guardrails really hold. This is not King Donald the First or the Second. Just a point from your American.
All right. Perhaps we were projecting here from our own situation back in the UK, in the constitutional monarchy. Just on Iran, very quickly, Aaron David Miller. I mean, I'm slightly confused. I wonder if you can clear this up, whether Trump wants regime change in Iran or does not want regime change in Iran. You know, does he want to get involved in some kind of conflict that is brewing between Israel and Iran at the moment? What do you think?
Yeah, look, my takeaway here, again, based on my first point, is that what Donald Trump does not want is a major Israeli-Iranian war which draws the United States in and affects the price of oil. That's number one. Donald Trump does not want to be the American president on whose watch Iran finally moves from a nuclear weapons threshold state to actually a state that actually can acquire relatively quickly, according to some experts, a deliverable nuclear device. He will be tough, but I wouldn't rule out the possibility of leaving the door open. After all, he fashions himself the greatest negotiator in the history of the universe for some pathway forward. But no, I think the default position here is going to be maximum pressure. Whether that means enabling an Israeli strike or joining the Israelis in an American strike remains to be seen.
Right. Let's move to Elon Musk listening in on that call to President Zelensky of Ukraine and apparently taking part in that call, actually speaking to President Zelensky, which he has done on several occasions before. Elon Musk is many things. He's an engineer, he's an entrepreneur, he's the owner of X, but he's not a foreign policy expert. Does it bother you that Musk seems to have this very prominent role?
In a way, it sure does. I mean, Elon Musk's half a dozen companies all depend on access and government contracts. And we know he's pushing aggressively to hire several of his either SpaceX or Tesla employees for jobs at the Department of Defense. Look, this to me is not a good sign. It's not a good sign because in part it may be the blind leading the blind. It's not a good sign because it crosses the line between what we would consider the interests of the private sector in America and American national interests. You know, the old saw, what's good for GM was good for America and vice versa. I mean, that holds in many respects, but not if you are giving an individual special access to government contracts, special access to classified material, and putting him in a position where he is providing advice to a guy who clearly needs it. The question is whether he needs it from Elon Musk.
But just very briefly, I mean, Elon Musk, I think, was also reassuring Zelensky about the use of Musk's Starlink satellite network, which is something the Iranians might want to hear from the horse's mouth.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. And it really does raise the question. Zelensky apparently left the call somewhat reassured about the direction of the putative Trump administration's policies on Ukraine. Yeah. I guess we'll see.
Okay. Okay. Aaron David Miller, thank you very much indeed. Well, 3 days on, the final results are still coming in for both the presidency and Congress. So let's take a quick look at where we stand exactly. Nevada and Arizona are still outstanding in the presidential race, with almost all votes counted, Donald Trump is projected to win Nevada. He's also ahead in Arizona, but almost a quarter of votes have yet to be counted there. That leaves him with 295 electoral college votes and Kamala Harris on 226. He's also ahead in the popular vote with 4 million more votes than the vice president, although results in California will probably narrow that margin slightly. Turning to Congress, the Republicans have cemented their control of the US Senate, projected to flip 4 seats. They now have 53 to the Democrats' 45, with 2 yet to be called in Nevada and Arizona. And the House of Representatives still in play. 25 of its seats have yet to be called, but the Republicans are just 7 short of the 218 seats that will give them control, while the Democrats have 199. Well, we are now joined here by Lance Trova, a Republican strategist, and Lauren Windsor, a progressive activist and filmmaker. Welcome to you both. Let me start with you, Lance. What do you hope Trump will do in terms of the new world order that he can now preside over to some extent? And is it really okay to have Elon Musk in on these calls?
Well, I think what we saw on Tuesday night was a rebuke of the last 4 years and the policies that were basically took the Trump policies and ripped them all to shreds. And we saw record inflation in this country. We saw a border spiral out of control with illegal immigrants flooding into this country. And what you saw on Tuesday was a rebuke of those policies. I expect that the president will keep his promises and work to get the border under control. I think he will start on day one by instituting executive orders, reinstituting the ones that he had in place prior to him leaving the presidency in 2021, and then start to work on, and hopefully I hope that the Democrats come along and work with him to pass some policies to get that border under control.
And if you don't get your majority in the House of Representatives, to what extent does that flummox him?
I think either way, my sense is, and you talk to both Democrats and Republicans, the sense is that probably Republicans are going to control it, but whoever does control it, it will be a very small majority. I don't think anybody's really disagreeing with that. And that just means that Washington's going to have to work together to bring some of these policies to the table. But I would just argue that the country spoke pretty resoundingly on Tuesday, and Donald Trump does have a mandate. And so I think that Democrats ought to take heed of that.
Lauren Windsor, can the Democrats work with the Republicans on all these projects?
I think they should. I think that bipartisanship has taken on a very, status of being a dirty word in modern politics. I am a big believer that voters should get exactly what they voted for. So I hope, though, that it's very clarifying for folks about what that actually means.
Right. Clarifying in a good way or a bad way?
I don't wish harm on anyone, but if people voted for mass deportations, then they should understand what that really means. I mean, there's going to be entire industries that are devastated. The farming industry depends on agricultural workers that come from other countries. The restaurant industry depends on immigrant labor. The cost of mass deportations, of removing 11 million people from this country, I think we're not prepared for that.
Plus the drama of it. There was a film in the 70s called A Day Without Mexicans, imagining this economy, this society, without people doing the labor that these immigrants do, and it looked pretty bleak, I have to say. I mean,
I don't think Lance is going to pick his strawberries, so I don't think that any of these.
That's a fair point, isn't it, Lance? I mean,
I like strawberries. I'm not opposed to picking them.
But you rely on immigrant labor, don't you?
Well,
from south of
of course the country relies on immigrant labor. But I go back to what I think that if there was a report yesterday, they're going to start with the border security bills. It's reinstituting the policies that they had in place. And by every indication of what's been reported, they're going to start with the folks who have committed crimes that are in this country illegally and go from there. I don't think anybody denies that this is a long process. But I also would note that 2 different polls in the course of the last several weeks of the campaign, over 55% showed support for mass deportations.
Let's just say that Trump tanked, a bipartisan border bill that was negotiated by Senator Langford, who I don't think anyone would ever say is some raging liberal. James Langford is a really conservative Republican, and he led the negotiations on that. And the entirety of the reason that wasn't passed into law in the Biden administration was because Donald Trump wanted to be able to run on it as a political issue.
I mean, I get the impression at the moment, people have sort of put their swords away. There's a degree of shock amongst the Democrats. There's a sense of elation with Republicans. There seems to be a kind of tentative calm, but things could get, the tempers could fray very quickly after January the 20th, couldn't they?
It's American politics. Of course the politics may fray, but again, I go back to what happened on Tuesday night and the message that the American people sent. And I think Donald Trump, and I hope Democrats will, and you talked about bipartisanship, I completely agree with you on that. And I hope Democrats afford him the opportunity to get some of these things done, like getting the border under control and getting inflation under control.
It's still a 50-50 nation, isn't it?
Inflation was under control,
even though
though.
you won by, a convincing margin, it's still a 50-50 nation.
There were a lot of mistakes that were made here. They're going to continue to say that they had a mandate to move forward. We'll see what happens with control of the House. But, regardless of what happens, I don't think that Donald Trump is going to find it as easy to steamroll the Democratic Party and the people, who did not vote for him into accepting some of the worst, most draconian things that he's proposed.
And very briefly, what's your message to angry Democrats who say we will never concede?
No, I think that you have to concede, and I think it actually takes a lot of soul searching into, it's not calling voters racist, misogynist, and stupid isn't the way forward. Looking at what did we do, how can we improve our message, and what can we deliver to win these voters is what is incumbent upon us to do.
Right. Lance, in 5 seconds, a bit of grace from the victor towards the people who've been defeated? Grace and goodwill?
I'm sure that the president is going to be looking for all hands to help him get this agenda through in Congress.
Lance Trova, Lauren Windsor, thank you very much to both of you.